Mhm. Welcome back to Cyberwire for episode 8. I'm absolutely thrilled to have Rick Gordon on with us today. Rick is co-founder and CEO of Tidal Cyber. Rick, I'll give you an opportunity to give us a little bit more of an intro into yourself.
Sure. As you said, co-founder and CEO of Tidal Cyber. We're a little over 3-year-old cybersecurity company, really birthed out of a lot of the hard work that we were doing when 3 co-founders and actually the first 6 employees were all at MITRE, working in the area of threat informed defense. Probably been in the industry since 1999, so I've been doing this for the majority of my professional career, which has sort of been fun to watch the industry evolve and sort of take advantage of good opportunities. Have either been an entrepreneur, early stage investor, or advisor to many early stage security companies.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the overview and yeah, obviously it's been incredible what you built at Tidal for the past couple of years. But what I really want to start with is the backstory into that, because obviously everybody is building something for a reason. And I think let's more specifically get into your time at Looking Glass and obviously MITRE, because that's where a lot of the team are from. So maybe give us a bit of an overview of your time there.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of what we're doing really was sort of built on sort of a lot of dislocations that in the industry that I identified, going back to 2010, 2011, even from, the time I was at Looking Glass. I went to Looking Glass as a COO. I even went there before anyone had coined the term threat intelligence platform, or TIP, didn't even exist then. What we were trying to do is, we had conviction around the notion that we could defend ourselves better if we had any visibility into what was going on externally via the threat intelligence environment. Threat intelligence was super, even at that time, nascent. MITRE ATT&CK did not exist. And then, I think I'd gone on from Looking Glass to go run a thing called Mach 37. But then around 20, let's say 18, MITRE ATT&CK started to emerge. And I started to recognize even then that the profound impact that attack was going to have. What we struggled with at Looking Glass was there was no sort of common structure, no common language in the way that we in the security industry were describing adversary behaviors. And what Blake Strom had done at MITRE was create this really logical, hierarchical framework for describing tactics, techniques, and procedures that one gave us an ability to communicate what adversaries were doing against us more efficiently, but it also did it probably in a way that many of us underestimate. It democratized the availability of threat intelligence in a structured framework for really everyone. And that a big reason I went to MITRE was because of that. I recognized what the impact that Blake had when he created it. But similarly, my 2 co-founders, Rich Struess and Frank Duff, are also doing amazing things. There, Rich had built the Center for Threat Informed Defense. Frank had created a thing called MITRE ATT&CK Evals, both of which I think were profoundly moving the industry forward in our collective ability to be able to take this structured knowledge of adversary behaviors and apply it to many security use cases. That so that when we were at MITRE, our job was to drive the adoption of this structured knowledge base into the commercial environment. From MITRE's perspective, it was all about protecting critical infrastructure. All mission oriented. But I think maybe 6 months into it, we started to recognize a couple things. One, there's a tremendous business opportunity to solve this problem, and that our customers, even our commercial customers at MITRE, really needed this to be baked into a SaaS platform, just because the industry's evolved and we consume technology that way. So I'm a serial entrepreneur, and so that's about all I needed to hear. I sat down with Rich and Frank. I said, listen, there aren't this many big opportunities to sort of emerge, but collectively, the work that those 2 had done with MITRE had really closed a lot of those remaining gaps that we were vexed by back in 2010, 2011. I'm not sure anybody realized it. But what I really believed and luckily convinced both of them is, like, we could finish the mission. build the adjacent capabilities to MITRE ATT&CK that would allow anyone, regardless of their size, to contextualize threat intelligence not only to their company or their market segment, but also to their environment and defensive stack automatically in a scalable way that really would allow everyone to be able to take advantage of this advanced capability without having to spend millions and millions of dollars to deliver it.
Awesome. No, and there you have the foundations of building what you have at Tidal, and I think cost is obviously a huge thing that's not just associated to this specifically, but pretty much all of cybersecurity in general. Everybody thinks that it's a very expensive kind of thing to invest in, not necessarily thinking about how much money you're probably going to spend if you don't invest in it, but. I suppose you were able to identify a gap there in the market, and obviously kind of being able to build what you've built over the past few years or so. Be really interested to maybe kind of explore how did you build those foundation blocks to kind of make that, I suppose, the transition of here's a gap in the market. We've sat together, we've acknowledged what it is.
Yeah.
How do we go and build it?
That's a great question. I think the big question we were trying to answer, the problem we were trying to answer was one I think that a lot of people have been struggling to answer for a long time, and maybe a lot of us in the industry, I've been in it a long time, have given up on answering a question. The question is it's a basic security question. Can I defend effectively against the tradecraft that adversaries that are attacking us today or companies like us today are actually using? And if not, how should I reallocate my precious resources to reduce that risk the best way that I can? That is at the core of what every security professional does, whether it's national security, whether it's physical security, or whether it's cybersecurity. And in cybersecurity, we've not been able to answer that ever. And so for a lot of reasons, I mentioned dislocations and sort of market segments, but let's just say on the threat side, answering that question means you have to understand who's attacking you with what, and what has to be as specific as you can describe it, because you want to be able to prescribe actions to ameliorate the risk of whatever what is, right? Similar in a lot of folks, while MITRE had done a lot to democratize the availability of that knowledge, they didn't automate the contextualization of who's attacking you with what enough so that anyone could sort of avail themselves of the knowledge of, okay, these are the techniques of 650 techniques that MITRE enumerates, which of them really matter to me and which ones matter more than others, right? And so that was problem that needed to be solved in order to make this work. The other problem that needed to be solved in order to make this work was to be able to understand what our tools actually do. One, by design, and then two, as configured. And sort of the history of security products over time, given the sort of level of complexity of a lot of the tools, especially like EDR SIEM, next gen firewall, for example, they do a lot of things. They have a lot of potential for a lot of coverage. And then they also have a lot of configurability and a lot of potential for misconfigurations. And so, and if you just for every one of our customers, it's, they oftentimes don't know what their products are capable of, and they don't know how to optimize the configuration of those products to protect their business in the best way. And in the best way in our mind is to have the maximum alignment against those techniques that adversaries are actually using against them today. So we had to develop a capability that made that automated in a way to make it accessible. And actually it was a little more complicated than that because it required a lot of cat herding with vendors. But one of the like awesome things that Frank Duff did when he was at MITRE, when he created MITRE ATT&CK evaluations, and if you're unfamiliar with that, what evals did was, worked with especially the EDR and the SIEM vendors and said, listen, you guys are making claims that you can defend against APT29 or, not different ransomware groups. And what we want to do is be able to show your customers how you do that. And so we created this annual test where he would emulate, a specific adversary group, what they were doing, and then the vendors would participate, and he would publish the results. And it by the third year, it became sort of an industry standard. If you were in those segments, you had to do this, right? And I think that did a lot to create transparency and accountability, which is the industry really needed. But what it really did is it got the vendors to grasp the importance of being able to structure what their capabilities were in the same structure that the adversary behaviors were structured in. And what that did is it gave us this a lot of sort of momentum behind getting the vendors to say, yeah, that's a really good idea. We'll help you. We'll work with you to help you understand how to articulate to your customers and our customers what we're capable of and how to maximize the value of the tools that we're building. And that we did that. We had those conversations, early in the process. It was the thing that I think we were concerned about most, because if the vendors weren't on board, then we wouldn't been able to pull this off. But similarly, the industry, the users in the industry would have suffered because they really did need this view. But luckily, given the credibility that Frank had with them, they almost to the vendor said, this is a really good idea. It's great for customer success. We want our customers to know, one, get all the value out of our platforms, but then two, we want our customers to know, like, as we're working in the background, building new capabilities, we want credit for it. Right. And this approach toward what ultimately has become coverage mapping gives them that credit, and it puts everything they're doing within the context of sort of all the risks that exist within a security environment. But I think more importantly, the alignment against, the adversaries that we know are attacking our kind of company.
Yeah, no, for sure. And there's a few different things that you kind of touched base on there. I think a huge part of it was that almost education piece of you don't know what you don't know in a sense. And obviously another thing that you've really highlighted is the critical value of that vendor kind of alignment and that understanding the value proposition that you guys have brought. And I think kind of, it's really important that companies that are going to be kind of utilizing it is that they're really understanding the value and the relevance of why they have to have this focus. And and I suppose kind of it's fair to say you guys are a little bit ahead of the curve in the sense that you've identified this gap, but not everybody's ready to take it seriously yet. And I think kind of maybe what do you think the change is going to be in the market, or what do you think the change needs to be in the market for this to kind of start to shift and people recognize how much of a priority it is to really be leveraging these kind of things?
Yeah, it change is happening. It's really remarkably easier for us to tell the story to customers today than it was a couple of years ago. If I were to sort of juxtapose, I'll be old school and talk about, crossing the chasm, right? If, it's sort of a, ancient book now. I think there are a late majority customers that we're not particularly concerned about today. I think they're generally oriented toward compliance, but everyone else is sort of leaning toward being more mature than that. And it just comes down to, for us, this. When we have conversations with security leaders at any company, if they're risk oriented or threat oriented at all, it doesn't take us very long to get them to concede that they can't effectively answer that basic security question. Again, can I defend effectively against the tradecraft that adversaries who are attacking us are using? Right? If as security professionals, if we can't answer that question, I'm pretty sure what we're doing really isn't security. It's compliance. And if that's, if that's where you are in your sort of level of maturity, or in your stage of maturity as a company, cool, go do that thing for now. You'll become a customer of mine soon, right? Because you eventually, once you've checked those boxes, of whatever compliance standard that you're being measured against, then you're going to start asking a couple of important questions. One is, well, what security value are we getting out of checking those boxes? And those standards don't share that. And then two, where do I need to improve? How can I save money yet still improve security? And unless you have this view, this sort of granular view of residual risk, and it evolves continually, which means you're doing coverage mapping, you really can't do the job. And so that's upmarket for us, a lot of sophisticated customers. As you can imagine, we have a lot of customers in the financial services sector because they're risk and threat oriented. They're really being attacked, and what they want to do is get the biggest bang for the buck out of all the investments they are making. But unless you do this, you can't. You're just flying blind. You can't do it. And so those have been a lot of our growth has come from those customers that are sort of living and breathing, trying to do coverage mapping, usually in spreadsheets. And it's just prohibitively expensive, takes too much time. Because it takes so much time, once it's completed, it's out of date because the adversary you're evaluating has already evolved or your defenses have already evolved. And they're looking for this thing already, and we're delivering it. The down market customers are just, you can start to see them. We're moving into other segments that maybe haven't been as early adopters as financial services, but in many cases it's because the security leaders that have moved into those segments have come from those regulated industries where the level of thinking of the security leader is more sophisticated, more security and risk oriented. Yet maybe at these other in the other industries, they may not have the same budgets to throw people at it, and now they don't have to, right? It's software that really does the analysis for you, which is really what technology is supposed to do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think kind of it ties into there's a couple of things there. Obviously, the great thing about cyber is and security is the fact that it's an evolving market and it evolves at a quick pace. But that can also be a big caveat to kind of what you mentioned there. If you're trying to map out something manually and you're not doing it quick enough, actually, then it just becomes redundant what you're doing, and it's a constant cat and mouse chase. But obviously, the benefit of having a market that evolves so quickly is you can build incredible software like this that can help kind of try and keep you ahead of the curve, I suppose. And I think on that note, because it is rapidly evolving, there's we're still going to probably continue to see this rate of change over the next several years. And I'd really be interested, Rick, to maybe get your thoughts on the predictions for the future and what do you think the next couple of years might look like?
So I think we're already seeing it, right? A huge emphasis in the security industry on AI and the leveraging of AI or machine learning to do more automation. I mean, we've already attempted to. It's really interesting. We did a lot. SOAR emerged sort of at the end of last decade. To automate a lot of events that were occurring, most of which were false alarms. So we didn't have enough people to sort of manage all of that. And so we're trying to automate as much of that as we can to sort of get to, don't worry about it, or this is real, and then kick off the additional workflows. I think what we're starting to recognize, even with SOAR, unless we're doing sort of prioritizing those based on risk, we still don't have enough money and enough people to sort of manage everything. And so, for beyond sort of using AI and ML to automate as much of the humans that we have to involve in the process, I think risk and orienting more toward risk is inevitable because there's just not enough money. I don't know a CISO that has enough money. I don't know a CISO that has enough people to actually do the job that they need to do, which means that we're going to have to rely on tech to actually, do the grunt work, get the data into the right structure that we needed and to ask the questions that we need to ask, rely on, more powerful computing to ask more questions all at once. All of those things I think are emerging, but for risk, it's going to, I think in a very normalized way, help us, and what is inevitably always a zero-sum budget environment, make the best bets with the investments that our bosses have given us I'll challenge anybody, if you're not making those investment decisions based on which thing to do reduces residual risk by the greatest amount, I don't think you're optimizing at all. I can't think of a better way to do security other than understand residual risk and understand the impact of taking action to reduce it, and then prioritize the things that do the most, right? And that's really, what we've centered on, not to bring it all back to me, but it's like you sort of ask the question, what's forcing this? Is the fiscal reality that we can't do all the things, right? Which means we have to understand residual risk at a low enough level of abstraction to be practical. Like if I, it's just like a high level extraction example, like if I'm doing, going through controls and an audit, then inevitably, if I don't have an EDR, the result is going to be I should get an EDR, right? Well, great, but what does that mean? I mean, yeah, for sure. Does it mean I have 30% improved coverage over everything? No, right? What it means is if your EDR is configured a certain way, you may cover these 300 behaviors really well. Go focus on the other behaviors with other tools, right? But those control standards don't tell you that, but we do.
No, really good to hear your perspective on that for sure, and definitely sounds like there's a few exciting years ahead, and obviously beyond. And what I really want to close off with, Rick, is I kind of circling back to the start of the podcast. We touched base on the journey that you've had to get to kind of where you are, and to be able to build what you guys have over at Tidal. And obviously you've been a senior leader, you've seen the demand in the market, you've found a way to solve it, and very much gone ahead and done that. In addition to that, one thing that you've done in your career is, you've kind of given back. You've gone into that investment side, you've supported entrepreneurs, and I think there's a lot of people out there that are in a position that you were, where actually I've identified a gap in the market. I can think of a way to solve it, but where do I go from here? And I think a lovely way to close off would be to maybe get your advice. What would you kind of throw out there to somebody that's maybe at the start of that journey?
Yeah, it's this isn't unique advice for me, but it is advice that we adhere to even when we started this company. Go out and talk to customers. Before you start building, all of even the first startup I did, we built the thing. And if I had really done product management well, I would have waited maybe 3 or 4 years. It was a email security gateway, about a decade too early, if I'm being honest. And so, valuable lesson I learned early in my career there, that I, really try to impart on every entrepreneur that I work with. Yeah, it's a really good idea. Now, here's what I want you to do. Go out and talk to 50 prospective customers, and ask them, do you have the problem I'm trying to solve? Do you like my approach? If I build it, will you buy it? And what would you consider paying for it? Right. And just by virtue of getting those critical questions answered, what you've just done is de-risked, taken a lot of the risk out of the equation that will, especially if any of those interactions or those discussions you have with customers are due diligenceable by an investor, you're very likely to be able to get the money that you need to actually build the thing that you think you want to build. I think what happens a lot of times is folks will just go build. I mean, especially technical founders, they'll just go build without a clear understanding of what the addressable market is. Do I have any competitive advantage in it? And in particular, is there white space? Right? Is there a problem we're solving that's big enough that no one else but me right now can solve? And then those are the if you can get sort of squeeze through that needle, then you've got something really valuable.
Right, amazing. And I think such a valuable advice to really take into account. Well, Rick, it's honestly, it's been such a pleasure having you on, and some really interesting topics that we've been able to cover there. Thank you so much for your time. As I say, yeah, really really great episode.
Thanks. I appreciate the opportunity.